Alright guys, in this video we are going to see how we can work with a text box, a box where you can input some text. That is an element that you can interact with. It's not simply, hey, are you there or not? So we are going to see a couple of things that we can do with these types of elements. So let's first go ahead and take our URL for the element. So first you have to go here to the Special Elements tab, and then you go to text input field. So let's take our URL. Alright, and I'm going to do a couple of things differently here. First, I'm going to take the driver out of the main method. I'm going to put it up here like this. In order for this to work, you have to make this driver static like this. Alright, so the errors are gone, and I'm also going to make our element up here static iWeb element and text box. Let's call it text box. And I'm not going to initialize it, because if you initialize it here like driver find element and so on, you will get an exception that it can't find the element or some other exception because you haven't opened the driver yet. So I will simply make a placeholder for the elements. Let's go with a placeholder. So I will delete this space here, and I'm going to initialize our element down here. So I'm going to say text box equals driver find element by, let's see how we are going to find it. We can see that it has a name selector, which is username. So we are going to use this. We are going to select it by name, and the name is username. And what are we going to do first with this element? Well, it's a text box, so it's an input text box, so we are going to write some text in it. Let's see how this works. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to say text box send keys, and here we have to supply a string of text that we are going to use as our input. So let's say test text, and we are going to make a 3 seconds pause so that we can see what is happening, because if we don't, the driver will automatically close the browser after it inputs the text and we won't see anything. We're going to do this by saying thread.sleep and 3000 milliseconds. Now you will get an error because we haven't included the needed dependencies for the thread class. So we're going to say using system threading, and it's perfect now. Alright, let's see, and let's run it and see what will happen. Our console, it's building the project, and let's see what will happen now. Alright, you can see we have test text down here in our input box. Now let's close this console. What else can we do with this? We can also erase the text from the text box. To do this, we simply have to say text box clear, and this is a method. And if we run this now again, let's put another pause down here. Come on. Let's delete these rows. Let's run it again. So we should have a text in the text box, 3 seconds pause. It should be deleted now, and another pause, and test is over. Alright, so this works nice. The last thing that we are going to do is, instead of clearing the text, we are going to take it out of there and output it on our console. Basically, we're going to take the contents of the text box and print it to our console, just like we did with the paragraph within the class name exercise. So we're going to do this by text box, and The last time we did something like this, we used the text method, but this time it's not going to work. And we have to use getAttribute method, and we have to say here value. We have to do this because with text boxes, with input text boxes, whatever is in the text box, whatever you have written, goes under the attribute value. So this is a place where you can find this text. You can't find it with the text method simply because you don't have any text between the tags of the element, and it will simply return nothing. It will return an empty string. So here we have to say console write line, of course, because we want to output it in our console, and close. Alright, let's run it and see what will happen. Alright, our console, we have the text here, and there it is, we have our text. Alright, another thing that you can do with the text box, as you can see here, it has a max length of 10. So this means that you can't input more than 10 characters in it. Now you can, doing the same thing, like here, get attribute value, you can get attribute max length and see what is the max length as a number. So if we change this to max length, we will get a number 10, I hope. Let's see, we have the text here and we get a 10. Alright, perfect. Well, I guess that this is enough for now. We're going to see a few other special elements in the next videos. So see you there. Alright guys, welcome to the second video of special elements section. Here we will export the checkbox. There are a couple of things that we can do with the checkbox. I have prepared here our URL. You can take it from special elements tab and then check button test. Alright, so here are our checkboxes that you can use. You can right click on it and inspect it, and you will see that both of these checkboxes have the exact same name selector. So we can't use the name selector for these. We have to use a CSS selector or Css Path Selector. But as we discussed, the Css Path and the CSS selectors are not very different, except that the CSS selector is much faster and more better supported across different browsers. So we are going to take the CSS selector, copy selector, and we're going to say here checkbox driver find element by CSS selector, and we're going to paste it here, and we have to escape our quotes here like this. So this will allow us to select the first checkbox. But what if we want to select the second checkbox? If we copy its selector and paste it here, let's paste it here. Come on, move ahead like that. You can see that the only difference between these two selectors is this number. And if you have more than two selections, they will also have, all of them will also have the same exact selectors, and the only difference will be this number here. Since they are in the same place, they are the same type of elements, and this is the only way that they can be differentiated. So we're going to create a new string here. We will call it option, string option, and it will simply be a number. In our first case it will be a 1, and we're going to place it here. So we will do this like this, a simple string concatenation, and we'll say option here. Alright, so now whatever number we place here, this selector will change so that it will select the proper element. Now, what we can do with the checkbox itself? Well, the main things that we probably want to do with the checkbox is to check if it's checked or not. And we can do this very simply by using the getAttribute method. If you see here, our second checkbox has an attribute called checked, and it has a value. And our first checkbox doesn't have any of these at all. So we are going to say if checkbox getAttribute checked equals, now what this attribute will return when we try to check it will be either a true string, a string with the word true, or nothing at all. So we should say here, we should try if it's equal to the word true, or if it's not equal to the word true, we will say else. So here the checkbox is checked. Come on, the checkbox is checked, and here it's not checked. So let's run this and see what will happen. We should get the second expression here. It should say that it's not checked, and it did. So let's try this with the second checkbox. We should change this to the number 3. I don't know why it's 3, but it's like this. So let's double check it, copy selector and child 3. Alright, so let's run it again. We should get the first message that the checkbox is checked. There it is, the checkbox is checked. We can also take its value. Again, by using the getAttribute, we can take the values of the checkboxes. So we can, let's remove this if from here. We don't need it for this example. And we can, let's remove this as well. So let's change this to 1 for the first checkbox. And we can do checkbox getAttribute value. Then we can change our option to be 3, and we can reinitialize our checkbox and take its value. So here we will take option 3, here we will take option 1, and we should get the values of both of these checkboxes. Bike and a car. Alright, so the last thing that I'm going to show you about checkboxes is how you can click them. And it's very simple. You simply have to say checkbox click. That's all. Let's put a simple pause here in order to see it. Now our checkbox should get clicked or checked. And you can see, oh, the pause was too small. Let's increase it. Alright, you can see that both checkboxes are now checked. And you can combine all these things that I showed you. For example, you can click the checkbox and then you can put an if statement here to check if the checkbox was clicked or checked after you did this, and many other things that you can do. It's up to your imagination. Alright, let's explore the radio buttons. We have a radio button test here in the special elements tab. So I have prepared 3 radio buttons for you, which we can use. And as you can see, we have the exact same situation like with the checkbox. We have the same name for all 3 buttons, the same name selector, so we can't use the name selector. We have to use the CSS selector again and simply change the last number in it. And again, we have a checked value, which will show us which one of the buttons is checked. Let's do this. So let's take the CSS selector. Let's find our element. it's no longer a checkbox, it's radio button. Radio button, driver, find element by CSS, and we have to escape the quotes here and this one, and perfect. We can do the same thing like with the checkboxes. We can check if the radio button is checked or not in exactly the same way. So if radio button get attribute checked should equal to true. So if it's checked, we say this radio button is checked, or this is one of, this is one of the unchecked radio buttons. Because as you know, in most cases at least, radio buttons are used when the user is given only one choice. So you can have only one of these selected at a time. You can't have more than one. So let's try and see what will happen. Building the project. Come on. All right. Open the driver. And this radio button is checked. Perfect. Now let's try the other buttons. Let's try this one. Let's get it selector. Let's see what its number is. The number is 3 for this. And what is the here? It's 5. Alright, let's change our option to 3 and let's change it here as well. We have to add our option string here like this. Let's run it again. We should get the second message this time, that this is one of the unchecked buttons. Perfect. Now if you have 4 or 5 radio buttons, you probably wouldn't like if you have to copy this 5 times for all your buttons. So instead, what we are going to do here, let me remove this. What we are going to do here is that we are going to create an array of strings that will hold our numbers for our elements in curly brackets. So we have 1, 5. We don't have comma here, and 3. These are our options. So we will put all this in a for cycle, which starts from 0 up to option length, and we're going to move all this inside our for loop. And we're going to change this a bit. We're going to say the first, the I button, radio button, is checked, or it's not. We have to put an I here also. So what this loop is going to do is that it will first take the first element, take the radio button with first element, then it's going to check if this element is checked. It's going to print a message in the console, and then it's going to take the second option from our string of options. It's going to check it again, and it's going to check all the options we have here. So we should get one message that says that there is a checked button, and it's not the 0th button. We have to maybe make it like this. And we should get the correct number now, I guess. We had to do this because the I starts from 0. Alright, so all the other things hold the same for the radial buttons. You can take their values with the get attribute method and many more. Well, let's move on to the next video. Alright, so we have two more topics to explore before we move on to making the real tests. These are the drop-down menus and the alert boxes, which we're going to see in the next video. So let's see what is a drop-down menu, how we can work with it, and all the stuff that you can do to it. So this is our website again, and this is our drop-down menu test. Let's get our URL first, put it here. Alright, so there is our drop-down menu. Let's right click on it, and this is our drop-down menu. These are the values that are in the drop-down menu. So our selector that we're going to use is a name, drop-down test. So let's write our selector. Let's create the element below the driver. Drop-down menu, driver, find element by name, and it was drop down menu, right? Drop down test. All right. Now, what can we do with the drop down test? Now, the first thing that we can do is we can check what is the current value selected on the drop down test. We can do this simply by using again our get attribute method and say console write line drop down menu get attribute value, and this will give us the current value. Let's try this out. All right, run. Let's build the project. Come on, console. All right, build. So what do we have? Volvo. Yes, we can see that Volvo is our current value. How we can check what are the options? What are the options of the drop-down menu? Well, in order to do this, we have to use a CSS selector, CSS path, and we are going to get the CSS path selector of the first element. Let's put it here, string drop down menu elements equals like this. So if you remember what I showed you about CSS selectors, is that you can change this last number in order to switch between the different elements here. So let's see what are the CSS selectors of the next items. This is 2. This is 3, and this should be 4. Let's check it. Yes, it's 4. So by changing this number here, we will get the next and next elements. So if we want to check the third element, we're going to write it like this, and let's create a new element, which will be iWeb element, and let's say element from the drop down menu. Wow, it's a bit long, but this is only to teach you. It's much easier to understand what we are doing here. So element from drop down menu equals driver find element by CSS selector, and we put the drop down menu elements here. So we can again console write line it element, so we can check what is the value, and if we want to select it and make it our new value for the drop down menu, we can say element drop down menu click, And to double check if it was changed, we can call again the get attribute value like we have here. So let's work a bit with this. Let's make it the selected value is, let's copy and paste it down here as well. And here we will write the third option from the drop down menu is. Let's run it and see what will happen. So we can see that our first value was Volvo, our second value is something that we don't know what it is, and the third value is after we selected the value that we want, it now became the first selected value. So the problem here with this OpenQA Selenium blah 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 is that I forgot here to write get attribute value. If we rerun it, we will get 3 values and no long OpenQA Selenium blah blah. Alright, we get Mercedes, and we can also see it if you want, if we put a pause here, thread.sleep, let's say 3 seconds. Let's rerun it. And we can see that it's Mercedes selected now. Another thing that you can do with the drop-down menus is that you can check all the values in it. So you can do this by using a for loop. We can do this by saying for. So we know that we have 4 elements in the drop-down menu. So we are going to make our loop start from 1 and end at 4. Then we're going to reinitialize our selector every time, and here instead of a number we will put the counter, the 3. Let me put the quotations here. So we will have an I here. So every time this loop runs, it will change the selector to CSS path plus the current number that is stored in I, and then close the brackets, so it will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can reinitialize our element as well. So we are going to copy and paste this here, and then we are going to output the results in our console. So let's use this. All right. So we will change let's change this to so this will give us the number of the current option, and we will see if it's correct. So let's put another pause here so that we can double check it. Make it 15 seconds. So let's rerun it and see what will happen. Let's run it. Come on. All right. And let's see. First option Volvo, second option Saab, third option Mercedes, and Audi. Everything is perfect. All right. I guess that this is enough for the drop-down menus. We saw how we can check the current value that is selected in the drop-down menu test, how we can get some of the values in the drop-down menu test and check it, or how we can take all the values from it and output them. And in a later video where we make test cases and test scenarios, we may have a test case where we have to check if the values of the drop-down menu are correct and we're going to check them with the values that we have prepared before we start the test. So we're going to compare them. So everything that we have learned so far and what we're going to learn in the next video for the alert boxes, which is the last video of the special elements section, is simply to teach you how to work with these elements, which will allow you to create better tests in the future. It will be much easier for you to create tests by knowing these tools. It may seem simple, some of the things up until now may seem very simple, but trust me, it takes a lot of time to get to this point, simply because it's really hard to find this information at one place. And this is of course my goal, to teach you all these things that you need to know in order to be able to create better tests. Alright, let's move on to the next video, and then we are going to start making tests. Alright guys, welcome to the video about alert boxes. In this video I will show you how you can work with alert boxes. So let's go and take our URL for the alert box, and you can find it up here. You will notice that as soon as I try to open this page, I get an alert box that says, hello, I am alert box, click OK to dismiss me. And I will click OK and take my URL and paste it here. Now, there are a couple of different things about alert boxes than the previous elements. We can't use inspect element here because there's nothing to inspect. And what we have to do is, instead of making a new iWeb element, we are going to make a new iAlert and call it alert. So in order to initialize the alert, we have to say alert equals driver switch to alert. This right here. When we do this, if we want to click on the alert, if we want to click on the OK on the alert to dismiss it, we simply say alert.accept. And let's put a pause here. 3000 milliseconds. Alright, let's run it. Building. Alright. And there, no alert. That's because it accepts it so fast that we can see it. Now, if you want to take the text out of the alert, we can use the alert.text. This is just like with the other elements. We simply say alert.text and it should output the text in the console before it accepts it. There it is. The text from the alert box. In order to confirm if the alert box was really accepted, what you can do is try to select another element that you can see only after you accept the text box, the alert box. For example, we may want to try to get this image, for example. Let's take its CSS selector and create a new iWeb element here, iWeb element image, and we will initialize it after we accept the alert box, because we don't see it before this. Driver image driver find element by CSS selector, and if image displayed, the alert was successfully accepted and I can see the image, or something went wrong. If you remember the no such element exception video, it might actually be better if we change this to a catch block and we put the if inside the try block. Inside the try block, like this. And we say here catch no such element exception. And let's format it like this. So if something goes wrong and we can't accept the alert for some reason, we won't be able to find the image element, and then we will get an exception. And we're handling the exception with the try catch block. Let's run it and see what will happen now. Alright, the alert was successfully accepted and I can see the image. Perfect. Alright, well, this is enough for the alert boxes. We are going to move on to the next section, which is about testing philosophy. We're going to talk a bit about what is a test case, what is a test scenario, what are the best assertion styles, how you should use the assertions, and a few other things. See you in the next section.